You're watching Behind the Headlines. I'm Lee Pacchia. Earlier this week, Glenn Greenwald from The Guardian broke the story of Edward Snowden, the 29-year-old CIA contractor responsible for what's being called one of the biggest intelligence leaks in U.S. history. In disclosing the details of a secretive NSA surveillance program, Snowden has already spurred litigation and a whole lot of public debate. Joining me now from our San Francisco bureau is Trevor Timm, privacy law expert with the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Welcome back, Trevor. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So people are calling this guy a whistleblower. Other people are saying no, he's not. What do you think? Is he a whistleblower? What's your definition of the term?
Well, I think we have to look at what type of information that he's been exposing. You know, these are massive domestic surveillance programs that the public had no idea were even occurring. And when Congress has asked the intelligence community about these programs, they have explicitly said that no, that they're not vacuuming up Americans' data along with data of foreigners. And now we know that's just simply not the case. So, you know, in this situation, a whistleblower is somebody who is exposing abuse or fraud or wrongdoing in government when there are no other avenues for that information to get out. So, you know, when we look at FISA surveillance and the NSA sucking up data on Americans, you know, we have tried to get this information through Congress. They refused to pass oversight provisions to the FISA Amendments Act and the Patriot Act in the last 2 years. You know, we've tried to get this through courts. The EFF has been suing over the warrantless surveillance program for over 6 years, and the government has argued that because the program is so secret, a judge can't even rule on its constitutionality, even if all the allegations that we say are true. And, you know, the Whistleblower Protection Act that the president has signed doesn't protect contractors like Edward Snowden. And there are over 1 million of those such contractors. So a lot of times the only way to get this information out is through the press.
Let's put the disclosure in context here. There's a lot being discussed in the press, but I want to get out what exactly Snowden's disclosure told us that the public already didn't know. Is it primarily the existence of this program to begin with, or is there a little bit more at play?
Well, a large portion of this program we've actually already known. You know, EFF's been suing over this for 6 years, like I was talking about previously. You know, we've had 3 NSA whistleblowers sign declarations in our lawsuit and an AT&T whistleblower. But these are government documents that really drive home the point that this is real, and it really makes the government, puts the government in a tough position where they can't deny this is real. You know, we've seen over the last week that Congress people and the administration have been declassifying things, have been admitting they're real. So, you know, this is great news. But, you know, there's 2 basic programs we're talking about here. One is under the Patriot Act, where the government claims that it can collect literally all the phone data, all the phone records data of all Americans, whether they're talking to people overseas or they're talking domestically and locally. And then there's the Internet surveillance program with the codename PRISM that's now become famous, where the government is using the FISA Amendments Act to suck up large portions of data, and it's unknown how much of that is actually American citizens. But in both cases, these programs were much bigger than I think a lot of people expected.
Just focusing on the public's and the government's reaction to this leak, I'm struck by how much of a tremendous difference there is in the way our society and law treats corporate whistleblowers and government whistleblowers. If you call out bad corporate behavior, one gets rewarded under the law in this country. If you do the same with the federal government, you're in hot water. DOJ is already looking into criminal charges against Snowden. Is it simply a matter of government whistleblowers getting caught up in matters of national security, or is there something more at play here?
Unfortunately, national security whistleblowers, at least in the last decade, are treated vastly different than all sorts of other whistleblowers. You know, President Obama came into office saying that he wanted to protect whistleblowers, and a lot of the biggest abuses during the Bush administration were uncovered by journalists who were talking to people in government who leaked them classified information because there was no other way to get it out. You know, some of these investigations into national security whistleblowers started under Bush, but the current president has prosecuted twice as many whistleblowers and leakers to the press as all other presidents combined, and they've all been in the national security realm. So it seems just in this one little area that there is no way for people people to come forward with information that could show that there is wrongdoing or unconstitutional behavior. And that's a real shame, because this is actually the area where we need it most, because this is the most secretive area of government, and it's the area where there is most likely for abuse.
Now, Snowden says he did nothing wrong, and people say what he did is different from other leakers, say Bradley Manning's disclosure of confidential material. That said, I know it's hard to prognosticate on this sort of thing, but how do you see this unfolding for Snowden? How differently, if at all, will the government view Snowden's disclosure apart from Bradley Manning's?
Well, I think it's first it's important to point out that none of Bradley Manning's disclosures have resulted in any harm to any individuals. You know, the government has been screaming from the rooftops that they have for 3 years, but they can't point to a single person who's been harmed. But that said, you know, with Edward Snowden here, he has made a conscious decision. He's thought about this a lot. He talks about in his interview how he has read through all this material carefully, and he's carefully avoided, making sure that any names of covert operatives or anybody could be put in harm by this information. And we can see that in the releases now. You know, these are really, really broad orders affecting pretty much all Americans. These programs are just, collect massive amounts of information. They're not targeted on individuals or explain in too much detail how the NSA would go about it, so it could potentially, help our adversaries. So, this is kind of the classic case of a whistleblower where, he is number one, he wants to make sure that the American public find out about this stuff, but number two, he doesn't want any harm to come from any individuals by their release.
I want to jump now to this ACLU suit. The ACLU is suing the NSA, and they have a rather unique claim. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, the ACLU is actually representing themselves in this suit, which is fairly rare. This is over the Patriot Act, Section 215. The first release, I think, that The Guardian put out, which is actually probably the most important release, even though it's been overshadowed by the PRISM scandal and the internet surveillance. But the Verizon court orders said that the NSA could vacuum up all Americans' phone data, not just calls overseas, but calls that are completely domestic. And what the ACLU is saying is that this both chills speech and affects people's privacy, because they would be less willing to call the ACLU if they want to report any government wrongdoing or have them represent them, because the government would automatically know that that's the number they're calling. They would know how long they're calling them for, how often they're calling them. So it's a situation where all Americans are affected, and the ACLU is probably one of the most affected because they're the ones that would be getting these calls normally. So it should be very interesting to see how it plays out. Even the author of the Patriot Act said this isn't how the law was written, and it's being abused, and the NSA may in fact be breaking the law. So hopefully we'll see a court take this up soon. And then we have to remember there's still our EFF lawsuit against warrantless wiretapping going on as well. So there's much to happen in the next coming weeks and months.
Yeah, Trevor, before you were talking about how there's really no way under the current system for government or national security whistleblowers to raise issues and wrongdoing that they see day to day and bring it to the public's attention. What's the EFF prescription to fixing this situation?
Well, the biggest prescription to the whistleblower situation and the warrantless surveillance situation is more transparency. I mean, the government is classifying documents at an all-time high right now, despite the fact that the Obama administration promised to be the most transparent in history. Last year we classified 92 million documents. The year before that it was 77 million, and in 2000, before Bush took office, it was 7 million. So it's just skyrocketed in the last decade, which means that virtually the entire national security apparatus is considered secret, and the government can tell the public information they want to know, but then try to hide information when the public wants to know more. So the easiest solution here would be to declassify exactly what types of information the government can get without a warrant, so that we can have an informed public debate about this, and that federal judges could actually rule on the constitutionality of these programs. All we want is a debate and a judge to hear the evidence. If the American people ultimately decide that this is what they want to happen and the judge's rule is constitutional, then so be it. But we haven't been able to have that debate or that discussion in federal court.
Yeah, there's some that say that the idea of transparency and matters of national security don't necessarily go hand in hand. I imagine it's a gargantuan task to find a way to satisfy both sets of needs there.
Well, obviously nobody is arguing that the government shouldn't keep some secrets, but in this situation, they are keeping everything secret. And, the disclosures that have happened in the past week don't get into any specific information that could potentially help any enemies. Obviously terrorists know that the U.S. is trying to listen to phone calls about them. And it's only the American people that have been kept in the dark, that it's actually their phone calls that are getting vacuumed up along with them. So, if the government can release a lot of information explaining exactly who is affected by these programs, even if they're just talking about in general numbers, so we have a better sense of what they're doing under our name, and then we can go from there to decide how to create better oversight procedures so that these types of abuse don't happen in the future.
Wild stuff. Trevor Timm from EFF, thanks so much for your time today, sir.
Thanks a lot.
If you'd like to learn more about the cases and issues we just ran through, be sure to go check out our offerings on BloombergLaw.com and also on the Bloomberg Terminal. You can see more of our videos on YouTube, and you can follow our updates, of course, on Twitter. I'm Pacchia. Thanks for watching.